In Between Fantasy Football Podcast, Season 4. Let's go, baby. Yeah. There was a time I had trouble talking about it. Congratulate them, we know they doubted. Somehow we made it up out the pit, back against the wall, never quit. Traversing through each obstacle, show a non-believer what's possible. Let nothing they can do stand in between me and my wildest dreams. Let's go. And that come at us could come in between. Life gave me the worst, yet my side grew so green. We've been down in the dirt, been tossed in the trash, but I never strayed from my path. When we're gone, we ain't looking back.
Maybe we were all way too high. Maybe that's our fault.
It's going to be a crazy time, but it's going to be a fun time.
Life is boring if you don't take some chances and do some things outside the box.
Your destination for both some feel-good lifestyle advice and some fantasy football advice. All right. It is Tuesday, November 15th. The push for the fantasy football playoffs is on. The In Between Fantasy Football Podcast back with you tonight, making the most of it in a feel-good variety. Of course, me, Seth Woolcock, back here leading the way. I am joined by a man who is on absolute heater right now as a fantasy analyst. He told you to pick up Rachaad White last week. He told you to pick up and play Foster Moreau. He is on a heater. The tight end collector, Nate Polvote. And also our good friend, a man who loves The Office, the hit sitcom, almost as much as he loves Mr. Kyle Pitts. That's our spreadsheet nerd, our father, husband, Munder Difflin, a.k.a. Scott Reinier. What is up, Mr. Scott Reinier? How are you as we shift through the latter half of the fantasy football season?
I'm good, man. And as you can see, it's now, even though I'm on the West Coast, because of fallback, it's now dark here, just like it's dark there. Don't have to be thrown off by it still being light here. I'm good, man. My fantasy season started off super rough, and it's been a lot better as of late. Still some toughness going on in my home leagues, but that's okay. But yeah, I'm excited, man. The buys are going to wrap up eventually, right? They eventually stop. I've been pretty gutted by buys the last few weeks, but I think most of my teams are going to start to kind of come out the other side of that. So excited for that, but just excited, man. It's a crazy season, bunch of stuff happening that we didn't expect, a bunch of teams leading divisions, a bunch of teams in the basement that we just didn't expect. It's super fun.
I absolutely agree with you. Nate, how are you doing after a busy last week, a busy 10 weeks so far, fantasy football content for you?
Yeah, it's been a little busy. I have a few things going on, but most importantly, though, is I'm here tonight, Tuesday night after, guys, was that the greatest game you've ever seen, that Minnesota-Buffalo game? That just had me hyped on the weekend because it was so much fun to watch. Then we followed it up with a killer Monday night game. It's been a great season, and I'm stoked that we're here again talking about it.
Absolutely. Week 11 on the horizon, guys, and tonight we're going to get you locked and loaded for it. Front and center, we're going to talk about Cooper Kupp, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, how we're going to react to these injuries, how we're going to move forward and fix our rosters after them. We're going to play then Ring of Fire. Bring in our guy Kyle Scott for that, audio editor extraordinaire. It's our drinking game morphed with fantasy football. So if you guys are watching live on the YouTube, grab a drink with us. Let's hang out. Let's have a good time. And then we'll round it out, as always, here on Tuesday nights with In the Scope, waivers, and more importantly, free agent finds. If you listened to us last week, Nate, he got you Rachaad White on the cheap. So great job on that, Nate. Looking forward to hearing what you have for us today. I want to welcome in the In Between Media family, the IBT family, of course. Looks like we got Brad Bolt back in the chat already. What's good, Brad? Hope you're having a great Tuesday. I think it's almost Wednesday probably already for Brad out there in Australia, but we appreciate you making us part of it nonetheless. And then if you guys are new to the podcast, please welcome in. We guys appreciate you guys making us a part of your Tuesday nights. We are your destination for some feel-good lifestyle advice and some fantasy football advice. If you guys enjoy this type of content, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, ask us questions, whether that's in the live chat, whether that's in the comments of the show. We will be sure to answer those and give you guys the best fantasy football advice we can this season. With all this being said, fellas, let's jump right into it, front and center style.
Sometimes taking that first step out the door is the hardest thing to do. Give it a chance, you'll be begging for more. Save the just for you. We're all somewhere in between. How about you come to the place we can have some fun? Ain't gotta worry about knowing not what it means. You can come and give me another, cause the night is young. At least I so thought.
This just in. Breaking news. Front and center.
All right, front and center. Let's get down to it, folks. And looks like we got Tootsie Pop, aka Rachel, back with us tonight. She says, hello, first time here to this show, our Tuesday night show. She tuned in on Friday. She's back on Tuesday. We love to see it. Same type of vibes here, Rachel. We're going to get you hooked up for another exciting week of fantasy football. Be sure to ask any questions you have of us. But, guys, we do have to start with some very unfortunate news, and that's Cooper Kupp suffering a high ankle sprain. It does require surgery, placed on IR. He could be out anywhere from a month to 6 weeks. Or with where the Rams are this season, guys, this could be the last time we see Cooper Kupp. First of all, what is your guys' general reaction to this tragic news?
I mean, it's been one after another this season. You know, I mean, like it almost got to the point where, you know, some of these studs, when they were just doing their thing like Cooper Kupp, you almost didn't want to hear their name. You know what I mean? No news was good news.
Yep.
And now Cooper Kupp falls victim to the injury bug. Just a brutal, I mean, you know, obviously an injury that that would have had him out for the rest of the season and threatened next season would have been worse.
Yes.
But for fantasy purposes, a 4 to 6 week injury this time of the year, it's brutal. I mean, you know, depending on the timing of it, he's pretty much droppable in redraft. I mean, which is just, it's unfathomable to say, but we've had to say that about multiple players so far this year that we didn't think we would. And I mean, it's obviously not good for a Rams team that has been struggling. You know, I've seen them compared to being one of the worst season after Super Bowl teams in history.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's just bad news.
And this was a team, Nate, we were already kind of bailing water for. And so how much just concerned in general are you for the Rams the rest of the way? I mean, we wanted to get out of these guys early in the season, almost after week 1. How are you feeling now here, 10 weeks in, no Cooper Kupp?
Not great, Bob. Like, he was the anchor of this offense. I think there's a chance that maybe this helps Allen Robinson, people who have shares of Allen Robinson. Maybe he picks it up a little bit, but I don't have a lot of hope. Just the way that Matthew Stafford's played, the inefficiency of this offense, and the lack of a run game. Losing Cooper Kupp, I feel like probably sinks their season. Any hope they had of crawling out of the basement of the NFC West and maybe having a shot at making the playoffs, I think that's gone. I think that ship has sailed now.
I think they're 3-7 at this point. So yeah, I absolutely agree. I think playoffs are out of reach for them. So we might not see Cooper Kupp back, guys. I think that's the bottom line here. We have Steele weighing in on Facebook here saying, I had Cooper Kupp. I need some help ASAP, Seth. It is a shame, man. It is a shame to see this. But Nate, you highlighted Van Jefferson earlier today in your column that he could be a guy, if you need to pick up here and play him, you can maybe get some value out of him. 7 targets this last week, caught a touchdown here, first of the season. He was battling that knee injury, early in the season. Are you confident in Van Jefferson at all here moving forward, Nate?
I mean, you have to be a little bit. We saw him last season kind of start to step into a role in this offense, even with Odell Beckham on the team. He was averaging just over 51 snaps a game last season. He ran routes on 90.5% of those snaps. So he was involved when he was healthy. And I think we would have seen a lot more Van Jefferson early on in the season had he not suffered that injury in camp ahead of the season, then went on to IR. Then they kind of tried to ease him back into it. But I think at this point now they have no choice. He's now the wide receiver 2 on this team behind Allen Robinson. And look, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here, but I think there's a chance that Van Jefferson, if he plays well enough, becomes the wide receiver 1 over Allen Robinson on this team.
I don't think that's controversial at all.
He has that big play capability, and they use him out of the backfield on occasion, not often. But he has that versatility to be a guy that can really possibly help them at least get to like 7 wins, 6-7 wins.
Okay. So, Nate, you have some confidence on Van Jefferson there. Steele's asking who are the people to pick up. Steele's Nate is recommending Van Jefferson if you want to stay with the Rams here, and I agree with that. I will support that notion. We're going to talk about more wide receivers later on the show, Steele, so hang around, and we'll get to those in the scope segment here, right around the 45-minute mark. Scott, what do you think this does to Tyler Higbee? He bounced back after a donut in the prior game, comes back 8 for 73. Is he a sit it and forget it tight end here moving forward? Been a very up and down season for Mr. Higbee. No touchdown somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's quite to sit it and forget it, but the first 5 weeks of the season, he was averaging almost 10 targets a game. He was a revelation at tight end, early in the season in PPR formats. And I honestly think the pass catcher that will bump up the most based on this injury is Tyler Higbee. I just think earlier in the season, Stafford tends to hyper focus Cooper Kupp and more often than not one other person. And in the first 5 games, that was Higbee. I mean, Kupp, had games with 18 targets, 14 targets, but Higbee had games with 10 targets, 11 targets, 14 targets, and they played much better in the start of the season than they have lately. So I think they're going to make an effort. I think he is more of, because, Cooper Kupp is not only does he have that ceiling that he has, but he's like the ultimate safety blanket for a quarterback. And I think Tyler Higbee fills that role more than the 2 wide receivers. As far as the 2 wide receivers go, I mean, Van Jefferson's worth an ad for sure. He's like under 10% rostered in ESPN right now.
Yeah, go get him.
And I mean, he had a pretty low snap share his first game back, but he's coming off the injury. It's hard to tell. I mean, I think Van Jefferson and Allen Robinson both bump up a little bit. But I think the biggest benefactor from a fantasy standpoint is Higbee.
Okay. Scott's rolling with Higbee there is the biggest bonus here from the Cooper Kupp injury. And then Brad Bolt saying Ben Skowronek breakout. I think Ben could also be used, but it's going to be tough. He's still kind of in that wide receiver 3 role, most likely, that he's been in most of the season. Rachel saying that she does like Van Jefferson a lot more than Allen Robinson. With you there, Nate. So Rachel's agreeing with you. And we got our guy Rut in here saying, how about them Vikings? Absolutely game of the year. We touched on that a little bit earlier here, Rut, but certainly a game of the year candidate. Guys, let's move forward to some other unfortunate injury news before we move on to some of the fun of the show. And that is Zach Ertz out for the rest of the season with an undisclosed knee injury. He is seeking a second opinion here, fellows. But what does this mean for Zach Ertz, the Arizona Cardinals? Because Ertz was a tight end 3. D-Hop, he's already been so valuable this season. Does it become more valuable right now? And also, what does this mean for Rondale Moore, who has been excellent so far? 3 back-to-back games above the wide receiver 16 or better for Rondale Moore. So, Scott, who do you think this implicates the most here with no Zach Ertz moving forward for the Cardinals?
I mean, I think D-Hop, he's shown I think he still has it, at least for this year. So, I mean, I think it's just less mouths to feed situation with D-Hop. I mean, Marquise Brown will be coming back soon. So, I mean, I don't think D-Hop necessarily changes in value too much. He's already pretty valuable. And Rondale Moore, I mean, he's been consistently productive, both NFL and fantasy-wise, for, multiple weeks now. I got to watch him up close and personal when they played the Seahawks. I think last week he, 9 catches for 94 yards. Like that's a beautiful stat line from a mostly slot receiver. So I think he benefits as well. I mean, the biggest question mark for me is Trey McBride, the next tight end up, we at least assume, who hasn't really done anything this season. I mean, he was the first tight end drafted in this draft, and we just haven't seen anything, which isn't super surprising. Rookie tight ends traditionally don't do much their first year. So we'll see. I mean, he jumped up to like a 90% snap share in this past game. So, I can't sit here and tell you, go pick up McBride, he's going to be a league winner. I just don't know. I don't know how good he's going to be this year, but he could be one of those guys. I mean, he's low rostership and redraft, if you've got a spot, pick him up before he hits. If he does, I'm going to be doing that in a few leagues where I have bench space. Yeah. I need a tight end.
Yep. It got brutal out there, guys, at the tight end position. I think we kind of covered here with the Arizona injury. I'm seeing some questions come in. We'll get to those in just a minute, but I do also want to talk about Dallas Goedert. He is going to miss extended time here, Nate. Shoulder injury for him. Does this bump up anyone with the Eagles like we're expecting it to with Arizona?
Muted.
Muted as well.
I think we see Devontae Smith get a little bit more involved. And hopefully we see A.J. Brown turn around from the future performance he had last night against Washington. Other than that, no, I don't think it really changes this offense that much. As far everybody's been fairly valuable anyway. Maybe we see a little bit more Quez Watkins, but I don't know after that fumble last night. It's kind of hard to tell how this is going to affect Philly because they're so good anyway.
Maybe if anything, it stabilizes A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith for me, guys, because it has been a teeter-totter. 1 week it's a Smith week, 1 week it's an A.J. Brown week. We've kind of gone back and forth a lot on that right now. So, Scott, are you bumping A.J. Brown up, Devonta Smith up, maybe the next month or so without Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, because I think, you can debate all night long about vacated targets, but with Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, they're two very talented receivers, so they earn targets. So I think it is a bump up for them. I don't think this is not great for the Eagles, though. I mean, Goedert was, I'd have to look at the stats exactly, but I think he was probably the second leading target earner on the team so far this year. So it's not an insignificant loss for the Eagles, who, had their first dud of a game. There was some super controversial penalties and decisions by the referees, but that didn't change the fact that they were, fighting for their lives against the Commanders late in the game. You know what I mean? That's not something anybody would have expected. So, we'll see. I think luckily, like if this were last year, if Dallas Goedert had, and he did battle some injuries last year, but the fact that they have Devonta Smith, the fact that they have A.J. Brown, the fact that they have Miles Sanders, who's when he gets been given the ball, he's been good. It's not like a death nail for him, but Goedert was putting together a pretty awesome season. So
yeah, it's a big loss in Philadelphia. I think they'll feel it just as fantasy managers do. Before we talk about how we replace the tight end 4 in Goedert and the tight end 5 here or tight end 3, in Zach Ertz, let's talk about a little bit about this question here from Michael Alexander. What's up, Michael? Hope you're having a great Tuesday. Thanks for making us part of it. Quick opinion. Would you rather have Derrick Henry, Chargers, Texans, Cowboys, or McCaffrey, Seahawks, Commanders, Raiders for the playoffs? This is a really interesting question. We saw a little bit more of a committee here this past week in San Francisco. Nate, how do you lean on this?
I'm going to say Derrick Henry because he is the majority of this offense. Last week against Denver, somehow, someway they shut him down, but that's not going to happen very often. You have to go with Derrick Henry here. I love McCaffrey, but like you alluded to, Seth, we saw a lot more Elijah Mitchell this past Sunday than I think anyone was expecting. I feel like Derrick Henry has the guaranteed volume, whereas McCaffrey, they're going to try and split to keep him healthy.
Yeah, I can definitely see your point of view there, Nate. How do you feel about this, Scott? Because it's a very interesting question here from Michael, because at the end of the day, Derrick does have the volume, but he does have a lower floor in general because he doesn't get those receptions. So how do you feel about it here? He's also in first place within his league as well. Congrats to you, Michael. How do you feel here, Scott?
Anytime you're debating between two top 4 players, it can be difficult to pick one. I will say, if we asked this question a week ago, after McCaffrey threw a touchdown, caught a touchdown, ran a touchdown, returned a punt for a touchdown, saved us burning orphanage, all that stuff in that game before, I might have a different answer. But with Elijah Mitchell back, I don't know if this is going to be the trend or not. And they both have, because I break down fantasy points against, data. I break down the running back position to teams that give up a lot of points to just rushers and teams that give up a lot of points to pass catching RBs. So in this particular example, the Titans have like the second easiest schedule remaining and in the playoffs for rushers. That's for rushing the ball. However, the 49ers have the easiest schedule for receiving running backs in the playoffs. Wow.
Okay.
So, schedule wise, it's a toss up for me. I honestly, I guess I could qualify. I know I need to answer. I think in half PPR, I'm leaning Henry. In full PPR, I'm going McCaffrey.
Okay. I appreciate that analysis there, Michael. I appreciate the question from you as well, man. Hope you're subscribed to the channel and come back and hang out with us again. We got Didi in the lake house here. Hello, boys. Good to see you as always, Didi. Thanks for tuning in tonight, our friend. We also have George Cook. Welcome back, George. He says, "My God, am I in a tough trade situation? I have Burrow and Fields sitting at 6-4, tied for second with 3 other teams. Nice little stacked league there for him. Do I move Fields, AJ Brown, and Dameon Pierce for CMC and CeeDee Lamb?" Wow, this is a really good question there. I'm not going to read off his entire roster, but if you guys want to look, it is there in the chat as well. Nate, how do you feel about this initially? Obviously, he's giving up one of the hottest commodities in fantasy football right now, Justin Fields. But AJ Brown, Dameon Pierce, those are no small feats either for pretty close in value. I'd say CMC and CeeDee Lamb.
So I need to know more because let's assume it's one quarterback because it has to be one quarterback.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're looking at moving Fields, I still, you know what? I don't know that I would do it. I might move Burrow over Fields because I think Fields has the higher ceiling. If you're looking to separate yourself, and if Fields keeps doing what he's doing, he is going to outscore Joe Burrow rest of season.
Oh yeah, for me, it's not even a question that, I mean, I would much rather have Burrow be in this, but what I'm thinking is I don't know if Burrow would get it done because I think the fog or anything is lifted on Justin Fields. You know what I mean? He's a league winner if he's healthy. So I hesitate on this one too. There's a couple different things at play for me with this one. One is Burrow has had his bye and Fields still has his.
Yes.
So there's that piece, and Fields is in week 14. So it's like, if you're tied for second, looking, if it's going to come down to the wire, Fields isn't necessarily going to help you in that in week 14. That being said, I'd rather have Fields in the playoffs. I mean, I might try and reduce the trade a little bit and do Burrow, maybe 2 for 1 instead of 3 for 2, maybe. But can you put the trade back up?
Yes,
the actual trade.
I personally am at the point where I would not be making this move. I understand the appeal of CeeDee over AJ Brown, but we just talked about, I think AJ Brown is going to be a little more steady here for you, George, down the stretch, just because there is no Dallas Goedert. So I don't think you have to worry as much. And CeeDee Lamb's not invincible either. He's had his ups and downs. And I don't think the gap between CMC and Dameon Pierce is worth that, in my opinion. So I would not make this trade. I get the appeal of it, though. Scott, any final thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably like making the decision instead of tiptoeing around it like I do. I'm not making the trade. I don't want to give up Fields. I mean, I know that the Texans, and we'll talk about it, they just picked up Benjamin off waivers, but I mean, Dameon Pierce has been one of the most consistent running backs all season long. So, and yeah, I'm not making the move. I might consider it with Burrow instead, as long as I knew there was a quarterback I could play in week 14.
Right.
But I'm not moving Fields.
George is asking here, should we be concerned about, Benjamin? And I don't think you need to be overly concerned about, Benjamin. I think it'll take some work away from Rex Burkhead. I think this is a long-term play from the Texans. Benjamin is a solid back that I think can be a change of pace player in this Texans offense. But I think it's more of a 2023, 2024 move rather than it is right now. I'm not overly worried about it. I understand what you're saying there, George, but we're going to advise against doing this trade. And guys, let's go ahead and move into our tight end replacement talk here. How are we feeling about these tight ends right now on the waiver wire before we get into the depth of the position? Jawan Johnson, Jen highlighted him last week. If you talked to Jen, she got him for you for free. He's a tight end 3 over the last month. Jawan Johnson's been super intriguing. And then Foster Moreau, Nate, you highlighted Foster Moreau on Friday in the scope. 12.3 PPR points on 4 targets for 43 and 1 over the weekend. And then, guys, I'll say it, Cole Kmet, man, tight end 1 over the last month. My dear enemy, Cole Kmet, Nate's all-in pick, 5 TDs in the last 3 games, season high 7 targets. Out of these top 3 tight ends right now on the waiver wire, how are we feeling about them? Who are we pushing our fab in if we had Zach Ertz? If we had Dallas Goedert or if we've just been treading the whole season long. Nate, how you feeling about it? The tight end collector, my friend.
So, I mean, I like all three of these guys, and I think all three of them have their role in their offense kind of established. Who I think is going to see more work, though, and this is going to sound weird, is Foster Moreau, because he's essentially filling in for two players on IR now at this point. He's covering that middle of the field section. And I know I talked about this last week, but he's covering that middle of the field section for the Raiders where Renfro and Waller lived. Both are on IR. They need him to be that person. Moreau could be that person. He did it last week. I think we see his role continue to expand as these two are on IR. And honestly, I think they may shut Waller down for this season because they have nothing to play for. And he's got a long-term deal with the team. I see Moreau being a pretty solid rest of season tight end. I love Cole Kmet. I'm worried about the boom bust. I'm worried about that with Justin Fields and with the Bears offense. As much as I love him, I do have a little bit of concern that the 5 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks just is probably not sustainable.
So Nate, how are you ranking these 3 rest of the season for you and who you would be prioritizing on the waivers?
Probably Moreau, Kmet, Juwan Johnson in that order.
Scott, do you disagree? And do you have any input on any of these tight ends or your love? Because I know you're also a lover boy for Mr. Cole Kmet as well.
Yeah. You might argue. I was the sober one that had the memory to actually start that club when it started 2 years, almost 2 years ago now. No, I agree. I agree with Nate. Like I also have Juwan Johnson, right? Yeah. I have him third on this list. The Saints offense has just been, I mean, I've had some teams that really needed some Alvin Kamara points recently and it's just been disappointing. I mean, Johnson got the touchdown last week, but the Saints, their next 3 matchups are all against top 10 teams against the tight end in fewest points allowed to tight end. So I'm not super interested in Juwan Johnson. I would put Kmet ahead of Foster Moreau, but it's pretty close. I agree. I think Moreau has a chance for more long-term volume, and this is based on Waller just not playing anymore. And we don't know if that's
I don't think Waller's coming back, guys.
I don't think he is either, but we don't necessarily know that for sure. The reason and with Cole Kmet, it's been the trend, I mean, I know he, including myself, he was extremely disappointing early on, but recently, and especially this past, he has scored the touchdowns, which is what, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think Cole Kmet's going to be the tight end 1 next year, the overall tight end 1. And I've never gone that far with it. So, I mean, him being the overall tight end 1 over the last month does have a lot to do with touchdowns, but in this past game, he also had 73 receiving yards. And the Bears offense, including Justin Fields, passing volume has been on the increase. So I think this is sustainable for Kmet. And I think as weird as it is to say, I like their offense better right now than I like the Raiders. The Raiders are an absolute train wreck. They are 2-7, and they've had like the second easiest schedule this season.
It has been just atrocious for Las Vegas. That's certainly true. And honestly, if I am prioritizing, I am probably taking Cole Kmet with you, Scott. But I think Foster Moreau is second to me, and then Juwan Johnson, just because the usage is kind of up.
Yeah, I would be like if I'm stuck, if I'm Goddard or Ertz, team, I'm happy with either of these guys. I mean, I think Kmet is going to be the guy that's going to cost more right now if he's still on waivers because of the touchdowns, because of the spike games. So, I mean, in that case, it might be better to go after Moreau for cheaper. But I'd be, as far as who's available when this tight end freaking injury bug hit, those are 2 pretty solid options right now.
Yeah. And here, I just kind of wanted to quickly touch on to before we move forward, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant because it's what I do. It's part of the brand here, but I don't mind people happy about Cole Kmet and stuff, but and I tweeted this out and I got a lot of love for it, got a lot of hate for it, but I don't think, and Nate, you're a great example of someone who's not doing this, but so many redraft analysts right now are taking victory laps. Oh, I told you to draft Cole Kmet, but the people who've been benefiting from Cole Kmet aren't even the same people who likely drafted him in most redraft leagues. So I kind of want to applaud Nate for not victory lapping on Cole Kmet because it's not the same people. And if you think it's the same people, come fight me because I don't think it is. So
Okay, I got to add my 2 cents to this, as I did to your tweet. It kind of depends. I mean, like if you're not allowed to victory lap anybody unless they are good from the start of the season on, then sure, nobody can victory lap Cole Kmet. But that's kind of applying a pretty specific rule. I think anybody that was like going overboard saying you needed to draft him as a top 5 tight end, draft him as your tight end 1 on your team, spend high draft capital on him. Yeah, you probably shouldn't be talking. But people like myself, I haven't really victory lapped. I've been happy for it. But my deal was I thought he was a good value at tight end. I thought he was a great tight end to grab as maybe a second tight end. Didn't work out at the start of the season, but part of my like of him was I think he's a good tight end. And now that is showing up. You know what I mean? So I get what you're saying totally, Seth. I get that he didn't help you at the start of the season, but I mean, there's a lot of players. I mean, you can't victory lap Travis Etienne then because he wasn't good at the start of the season.
I think it's different though. I think it's different. Just with the whole Kmet thing, people dropped him. Like people weren't dropping Travis Etienne.
No,
Maybe
true.
they did trade him. I think it's a different case. Nate, any final thoughts here on the whole Cole Kmet thing? Because I just thought it was kind of an interesting scenario that we kind of laid out there on socials.
Well, if you were telling people to draft him as a top 5 tight end, that was a really bad thing to be telling people. I was very clear in my advice. You take him as a second tight end. You take him at the back end of your draft because he's available. Take a flyer on him. If you can't afford to hold him and you need a clear roster spot, you drop Cole Kmet at some point during the season if he's not producing. If he is, then obviously you're going to hold that roster spot. If you approached it that way, it paid off for you.
I think you did say Cole Kmet is top 5 upside, though. I think you did.
I did.
That.
He does,
and he does because he's been the tight end 1 for a month.
He's been tight end 1 for a month.
He's got the upside. We're seeing it right now.
I did, and that was it. By the end of the season, I thought that he had top 5 potential. And
he's tight end 7 right now.
It turns out I was right.
Tight end 12. He's tight end 12 now. He's
in half PPR. I thought he was tight end 7. I thought somebody.
In full PPR, he's 12. We normally go full PPR. But final thoughts here on the tight end, guys. If you do need some other help with your tight end position, Hayden Hurst over 8 PPR points in 5 out of his last 6 games. More of a floor play without Jamar Chase. He does have somewhat of a ceiling. So Hayden Hurst, he's available in over half of ESPN leagues. And then Isaiah Likely, as long as Mark Andrews out, he could be a fixture in this passing offense. 22.6% rostered on ESPN leagues. So Isaiah Likely. Then we kind of touched on Trey McBride. He's more of a flyer, a dart throw, but an interesting one nonetheless. He did have 4 catches, just 4 catches on the season, so it's not too crazy, but he was the number 1 tight end drafted in the NFL draft. Final thing I want to talk about before we jump into our first segment or next segment here, Ring of Fire, is I want to talk about Eno Benjamin. He did get released by the Cardinals, and we don't know what this is about. We don't know if it's a behavior thing, off the field issue. I don't really want to speculate about it, but I just think this is a little bit of a bump for James Conner. Keontae Ingram, if you're struggling at running back, should also be rostered now because of this news. So Keontae Ingram,
don't tip my hand.
Hey, sorry. That's how we go here. Keontae Ingram, he should be rostered. James Conner gets a boost, and I'm not too worried about Dameon Pierce. I don't know if anything you guys would change from that.
No. Why would you be worried about Dameon Pierce? People are crazy, man.
First of all, Douglas Taco says hi. He's interrupting the podcast because he needs pets. Yeah, I don't want to speculate either. I mean, like, generally speaking, if this was a cut because of, just based off not being good enough, then that would be even more evidence that it's a waiver wire ad for a team. It shouldn't be seen as a detriment to the starter. If it was something else, and he actually still does, I mean, I don't know. We're speculating at this point. But like I said, I'm not worried about Dameon Pierce. I think this is, I mean, obviously they're not picking up Eno for a playoff run or anything like that. But I mean, Pierce has been up with the league leaders in volume, opportunity share all season long. So I think it's just to give him a little bit of a breather with somebody that was available for cheap.
I agree. And then before we move on to Ring of Fire, guys, we do have a question from Rachel. I know you're talking tight end, but what the heck is the deal, CH? And this is a mystery. Nate, what do you have for this? Because he doesn't receive a touch here in week 10. Just absolute blasphemy.
So I'm going to say the same thing I said when he was being taken in the first round of rookie drafts in 2020. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is an overrated running back prospect in the NFL who is not going to pan out. I don't care if he changes teams. It doesn't matter. Kansas City has given him 3 seasons to make this work. It went so poor that they went out and they acquired Ronald Jones this offseason. They drafted Isaiah Pacheco this offseason. And they acquired Jerick McKinnon last year and retained him into this season.
But Nate, he did have early season success, though. Like that's, I think, why everyone is so stunned, because Clyde was having his best season of his career coming into this.
Yeah, and then teams watched a little bit of film on what he was doing early in the season, and it stopped.
So you just think this is a talent issue with Clyde then?
Yes, 100%. I don't think he has the skill that everyone thought he has, and I think he has a problem with understanding offenses and reading what a defense is doing at the running back position. I think it's an all-around just skill understanding of the game problem for him.
Yeah, and I mean, the early season, I mean, you have to be careful to blame touchdowns for things because we want touchdowns. But I mean, his numbers were buoyed significantly early on by a couple of multi-touchdown catch games, where if you looked at his usage, it was not much, but he scored a couple touchdowns, and that has dried up. And in the scope, I will talk a little bit more about it later.
Okay. Yep. Let's leave it there, guys. Let's go ahead and move into some Ring of Fire.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got something real special planned for you tonight. This is the Ring of Fire, featuring our special guest, Kyle Scott. Now y'all saddle up, strap in. We're gonna have a real good time.
You heard the man. Saddle up, strap in. It's going to be a real good time, guys. This is Ring of Fire, and this is a classic college drinking game that we've turned into a little bit of our fun mini game here of the Fantasy Football Podcast here at In Between Media. And we welcome in audio editor extraordinaire Kyle Scott, also a college drinking buddy of mine.
How's it going, guys?
Hey, Kyle.
Kyle!
How you doing tonight, Kyle?
I'm doing fantastic. Ready to play some Ring of Fire with you guys.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, as we pull up our deck of cards here, can you explain the game to those new to the channel?
Yeah, so basically, everyone's going to pull a card, and the value of the card is going to correlate to a question, and you're going to answer that question. Simple as that.
Okay. So let's go ahead. Let's click our first card here. Again, each card has a different role, and Kyle will explain that role of that card. So let's start here. We have Ace. Kyle, what does our Ace card mean?
So the Ace is going to be a guess who.
Okay.
So everyone, I am thinking of a player, and you are each going to get a question. It's kind of like 20 questions to deduce what that player is.
Okay. Awesome. I will start us out. We'll kind of just go down the list here. And we're going to do yes or no questions that Kyle can answer. And then we'll go through one round here, and we'll try to make guesses and see if we can get it. So I'm going to go and say, is this an offensive player?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this a skill position player?
Define the skill position.
Wide receiver, tight end, quarterback?
Running back. Is this a currently active player?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have an active player. Let's go another round through. We don't have too much info. Does this player play in the AFC?
No.
Okay.
Does this player play in the NFC East?
No.
Okay.
Is it Cole Kmet?
No, it is not Cole Kmet. Damn It's never going to be.
Took a
Cole
shot.
Kmet.
I took a shot.
Has this player been productive for fantasy managers this season?
Not really. No.
Okay. All right.
Well, then it can't be Cole Kmet. Ooh.
Let's go. What do you got for us, Nate? You got a question?
Is this player a wide receiver?
No. I'll give you a clue. He's a quarterback. Speed it up a little.
Quarterback, NFC, not NFC East, hasn't been productive for fantasy. All right, I think we can start taking shots now. I think I did this. Did this player play in the SEC? Do you know?
I believe he did. I think so.
Okay. Okay, everyone, one more question, and then we'll do guesses.
Does this player's name rhyme with Schmaker Schmayfield?
No.
Wow, that was an awful question, Nate.
Hey
Yeah,
now.
you should have just guessed because I would have gotten it.
What do you got?
Is it Aaron Rodgers?
It is Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, okay.
That is not the SEC.
That is
That
not
was
the
the
SEC,
Pac-10, now the Pac-12.
Yeah. Kyle, do
Of
Of course,
your-
I guess to be fair, Baker Mayfield didn't play in the SEC either. So
All right, we'll give it to Scott nonetheless. We're flipping
I
another
got it right.
card.
And even though he said he was in the SSC, I still guessed him. So
Still got it right. That's impressive.
All right,
Cal
Kyle,
Bears.
what does card 6 here represent, Kyle?
So 6 is pick 6. So I'm gonna name a top 6 of a category. I'm sorry, you are going to name the top 6 of a category, and the category is the most rushing touchdowns.
This
career.
season, 2020,
This season.
2022, rushing touchdowns. We'll go Family Feud style. So Nate, you can start here, and you wanna try to get all 6 that have been in the top of the rushing touchdowns. Any position here, not just running back.
Oh, okay. Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
Rushing touchdowns?
Oh,
Oh, rushing touchdown. I thought. Never mind. Derrick Henry.
yeah.
Okay, you're still on the clock, Nate. You got one of them.
Derrick Henry. Christian McCaffrey.
Wait, Kyle's got to give you the answer to Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, Kyle?
No, I don't. Oh, wait. No, I don't think he's in the top 10.
Okay. All right. Scott, you are now on the clock.
All right. Not Justin Jefferson. Derrick Henry. Nick Chubb.
Mm-hmm.
Blanking now. Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
These fields have. It's
Got
kind of
3 of them. We got half of them.
shit.
Keep it coming, Scott. 3
I'm
seconds.
going to keep it coming. Josh Jacobs.
Yes.
Oh, all right, Scott. You got 2 left here. You've gotten 3 of them.
Dante Foreman.
No.
I think I can get one here. I'm gonna go Jamal Williams.
Yeah. Yep. He's.
You got
in
one
there.
more, Seth.
Saquon Barkley.
No.
Okay, there's one left. We'll go one more time through if anyone can get it. If not, we'll call Scott the winner here.
Debo.
No. Did anyone say Kenneth Walker?
No,
Kenneth Walker.
is that who it is? It's Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been really funny if it wasn't.
All right, Kenneth Walker. I like that one, Kyle. Nice play there.
Yeah, those are fun.
Scott, we gave you 3. Congratulations on that one. Guys, go ahead and play along with us in the chat too. Let us know your guesses. We'd be sure to throw those up on the screen. Let us know what you think for these Ring of Fire. We'll do a couple more here. Let's go here. Next card, we have a number 9. Kyle, what does number 9 mean for us?
All right. So 9 is 9 times out of 10. So it felt like 9 times out of 10. Impractical Jokers was on True TV. Sorry.
What's another show on True
Yeah.
TV?
What's another show on True TV?
On what?
Oh,
On True TV. Name another show on True TV.
What's that one with Dan Abrams? Was it something Police Live? Live
PD.
Live PD.
Live PD. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's on anymore.
Is that on True TV? Was that on True?
Wait, do we have to name
It
9
was.
shows on True TV?
I think we just need to name one.
Okay.
I don't think there is 9 shows on True
I was
TV.
gonna say, that's the whole history of the show.
Oh, geez.
That's
There was a
really
comedy called
the
Those Who
network.
Can't that was on True TV.
Was like Unsolved Mysteries on that or anything like that? Or
True TV hasn't been around that long.
I think that's
Okay.
ID. I think you're thinking Discovery ID.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The only-
I think we give this one to Nate. I think.
Yeah, Nate gets it.
The only
Kyle,
one I
do you
can
know any
think
other
of-
shows on True TV?
There used to be a show called Hardcore Pawn, which was a
Oh,
just a
yeah.
Pawn Stars ripoff.
What a clever name. What a random question. I love it.
It was awful. It was based in Detroit. It was
Sounds
terrible.
awful.
Guys, let's tear up one more card here, and then we'll flip to our waiver segment in the scope. Another 9. We're not going to take the 9. We're not going to
Yeah,
take
there we
that
go.
9 as well.
There we go.
Who
We got,
shuffled?
we got a 3. Kyle, what do you got for 3?
So 3 is me. You're going to answer a question about yourself. So what is the best movie you've seen in the last month?
Nate,
guys
you go to
all
the
like
movies like
movies.
once a week. So Nate, what is the best movie you've seen in the last month, my friend?
Oh, we haven't been to a movie in over a month, I don't think. I'm trying to think what the last movie we saw was really good. Can I give you a TV show?
It can also be
Instead?
streaming, yes. No
Okay,
TV
so-
show. No TV show. Streaming movie.
Streaming movie.
Can you please say one of the 2 movies we talked about 2 weeks ago?
I
What
don't
do we-
even.
The
What did we
menu or
talk about
whatever?
2 weeks ago? What were those?
Oh, the menu. The menu. You know what's funny is that Jen and I talked about going to see that.
I want to see it. I'll see
on
it when
Friday.
it comes out.
But probably the best movie I've seen in the last month. I rewatched it. Jen and I rewatched it, but it was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent with Nicolas Cage.
Okay. Okay. I is that one he actually plays himself?
Yes, and it is so good. It's so funny.
Is that in theaters still, or is that on streaming?
I think it's on HBO Max now.
Okay. I was interested in that. We have DD in the chat saying Nobody is a good movie. Watched it 2 days ago. Okay, I'm interested in that. DD, let us
I
know.
always want movie suggestions for sure.
Yeah. Let us know where you're watching that, DD. We would love to check that out. The Nobody. Scott, what about you, man? I know you're kind of a movie TV buff over there. What's the best movie you've had in the last month?
All right, so mine was also a rewatch. I haven't watched that many new movies. Before this movie, probably the best movie I'd seen recently was finally I saw A Quiet Place 2. But this particular movie, I rewatched it recently because I had just watched the new Star Wars series Andor. So I recently watched the best Star Wars movie that exists, Rogue One.
Ooh, hot take.
That is a very hot take.
It's my take.
And it's
I
spicy.
stand by it.
What do you like about Rogue One, Scott?
Same thing I like about Andor. Like it really shows kind of some of the nitty gritty, rough, raw aspects of that universe under the empirical rule. And for nostalgic purposes, it led right into the first one I ever saw, A New Hope, the timing of it. So, the set design, the characters, the everything about it was what I remembered as a kid, with new and improved, with technology. I loved the story. I loved how it ended with they all got trapped and they all died. It was,
Kind of sad.
it was very sad, but I really liked that. That's what I mean. It was just real and raw and all of that, the entire movie to get one little tiny thing handed off to Princess Leia. That's what it was all for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is, that, and again, that leads into A New Hope. And in A New Hope, they use that information, to go destroy the Death Star. But all that backstory behind that one piece of information that they were able to, that movie blew me away when I first saw it. I didn't know what to expect. I just fucking love that movie.
Oh, awesome. DD
And Andor is fantastic if you're into the Disney Star Wars series.
I do want to check that out. I
Really good.
have been meaning to get to that. I am excited about that. I also need to watch the Jango Fett one as well. So I'm trying to catch up a little bit in the Star Wars universe. Didi's saying HBO Max is where nobody is. So apparently I need to get on HBO Max because we don't have that streaming service. Only one we don't have. I will say the best movie I've watched in the last month is one I just watched over the weekend, and that's the new Uncharted movie with Tom Holland. I don't know if you guys saw that one at all, based off the PlayStation video game. That's on Netflix right now. I was very surprised because it's a 2022 title. Very well done by him. You have a lot of other mainstream actors in there too. Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch is in that one. So I really love that one as well. Uncharted, if you guys have played the video games at all, really, really cool. Well done by the whole cast there. I thought that one was good.
So was the whole Funky Bunch in it, or just Mark Wahlberg?
Just Mark Wahlberg,
Okay.
not the whole Funky Bunch. No.
Well, then never mind. I don't want to see it.
Yeah,
I wanted the whole Funky Bunch.
The whole Funky Bunch, all like 60 years old.
Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg actually play really well off each other too, though. So I was very intrigued by that.
Mark
Kyle,
Wahlberg cracks me up, man.
Yes, I completely agree.
Cracks me up.
Kyle, you were a movie buff as well. Any final thoughts on any movies you've seen in the last month that people should be giving a try out there?
Yeah, actually, I watched a movie at the end of October, so I hope this still counts. It was The Purple Rose of Cairo, a Woody Allen movie. I thought it was delightful. It's about a movie character that comes out of the screen and into real life and falls in love with a woman, and then the actor that plays the character on the screen has to convince the movie character to go back to the movie. It's
Weird, crazy.
but really
Okay.
fun. It's a good romantic comedy.
That is very in the vein of how weird Woody Allen's
Yep,
films
that's.
are. So.
I was gonna say that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I haven't seen that one though.
Fantastic. And Kyle, where is that streaming at right now?
I don't believe it's streaming anymore, but it was on Amazon Prime, so you can probably
Okay.
still like rent it for a couple bucks.
Awesome. Well, guys, I appreciate the game of Ring of Fire. Let's round things out as we always do here on Tuesday nights with some In the Scope. Kyle, appreciate your hosting as always, my friend.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's jump in here, guys.
I have the stars in my sights.
Requesting permission to engage.
In the scope.
In the Scope, I think one of our most valuable segments, and we have an article that comes out that relates to this as well on Wednesdays. And guys, we've been able to find some really valuable In the Scope targets thus far this season. Nate, you touched on Rachaad White last week, so very well done. And he's definitely probably the top waiver claim of a lot of people's leagues right now. Only rostered 24.4%. So go pick up Rachaad White if you didn't get him last week under Nate's advising. Quickly, how do you guys feel about, would you spend up for either Christian Watson, 3 touchdowns, 5.8% rostered, or Kadarius Toney, just over or under 50% rostered for Kadarius Toney right now? Stepped up big in the absence of McCole Hardman and Juju. Nate, who would you be spending up for out of these two young and up-and-coming wide receivers?
Kadarius Toney, better situation. We saw him look electric in his second game with Kansas City, but his first real opportunity to see any sort of real volume in this offense. I think Toney fits what Kansas City needs him to be. I think that he's a guy who, as we get a couple of weeks into him playing there, a couple more weeks, he's a 5 to 7 target a game receiver. Whereas Christian Watson, it was cool to see, and the touchdown boom was crazy. But also Green Bay's been so bad and so inconsistent, you don't know what you're going to get from them week to week. 2 weeks ago, we thought it was going to be Romeo Doubs.
Yeah, it's true. And then even last week, we were on here representing Samori Toure as well. So it's been a back and forth situation here. Watson, we thought actually suffered a concussion in week 10, but he didn't. They just kind of pulled him from the game without really explanation. So weird situation in Green Bay. But is there trust enough for you, Scott, between Rodgers and Watson off a 3-touchdown game that you want to invest there over Mr. Kadarius Toney? And man, you love mightily coming into the season.
Oh yeah, no, I was very happy to see Toney have a game because I've written about him multiple times. I don't know what the hell was going on in New York, But did you guys see the play where he was adjusting his gloves while the ball was in the air and then went up and caught
Yes,
it?
I did.
Yes,
Oh my god.
yes.
I think if I was choosing between one of these two, I would choose Tony. I just think, I mean, we have to see, like, because part of this, Juju did get a concussion, and that did open the door for more playing time for Tony. Now, who's to say he wouldn't have gotten on the field more anyway? We don't really know. But I think I think he's safer in a way, which is weird to say about Kadarius Toney. Watson, though, I think has a bigger ceiling than Tony. I mean, Watson. It was only, I think, 4 catches, 3 touchdowns on 4 catches. But, I mean, they did that against the Dallas defense, one of the best defenses in the league. It's super risky, because it easily could be just a 1-game thing with him. But, I mean, Seth, he was your guy coming into the season. I know that. You and I think, well, I mean, I think all love it. We all love the talent. But it just, whether how much experience he had in college, where he played his college ball, would it translate to the NFL, or would it translate right away? All that was in question. But I mean, what I saw in the game in Week 10, he passed the eye test for me, at least. Yeah. So I mean, I'm probably prioritizing Tony, but I'm also going to be going after Watson too. It's kind of a home run play. It could backfire, but he could, if he lives up to his potential as just this freak athlete matchup nightmare, this might just be the start of something. We'll see.
I completely agree. I'm interested, though, in Watson over Tony. I think that is part of my personal preference, just kind of like you, Scott. I was really high on Watson coming into the season. I just think there's a lot of mouths to feed in Kansas City, so I don't really get good vibes out of Kansas City right now. If things shake out the way they could, Tony could be the wide receiver 4. That's not even to mention Travis Kelce when you factor McCole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, and MVS as well. So I just don't like, I think, the crowdedness there. Christian Watson, at least until Romeo Dobbs back, is probably the wide receiver 2 in Green Bay behind Allen Lazard. So I'd be paying up for Watson, but I understand the appeal for Tony as well. A couple more receivers just to quickly touch on. Nico Collins, he went off here last week. 6.7% rostered, might not be super sticky, but if you do need to play the next couple weeks, Collins could be interesting. And then Donovan Peoples-Jones, guys, we've been telling you, it's been half the season. I think we highlighted him first maybe in 4 weeks. Week 4 is an in the scope candidate. 22% rostered still. Whoever we had on Friday, Nate, I can't even remember who it was.
Jeff Greenwood.
Yeah, Jeff Greenwood. He recommended Donovan Peoples-Jones as his short thing sleeper. He had a top 25 receiver day. Jeff called that on Twitter too, so I'm sure he's happy. But DPJ, guys, he is the number 2 option here in the Cleveland passing game, especially without David Njoku at 100%. So consider them. If you need a quarterback coming up, Jared Goff, he continues to be viable. It's not sexy. It's not the ceiling he had early in the season with Hawkinson and all the boys healthy, but he still does have somewhat of a floor. So Jared Goff, someone to consider. But let's move into the meat of this segment, guys. These are the players that you aren't going to have to pay a lot for this week, but they could be viable down the stretch here. Nate, I want to start with you, my friend. You're on a hot streak in all these types of calls. You gave us Rachaad White last week. Who do you have for us here in week number 11?
So I kind of spoiled this earlier, but this week I like Keontae Ingram, the now running back 2 in Arizona, and we know he's the running back 2 because there are only 2 running backs rostered in Arizona right now on the active roster. You've got Keontae Ingram and you've got James Conner. We all know what happens to James Conner almost every season. The guy gets dinged up. He's getting older. We've already seen him hurt, miss 3 games. The team just released, Benjamin. I feel like that there's either something to why Benjamin was released that's on Benjamin, or the team doesn't want to spend the money to retain Benjamin when they have Keontae Ingram. I think it's the latter. Now, we haven't seen a lot of work from him, so this is kind of like a gut feel, like we're going off of now he's in this role, so he's going to see X volume or X production. We assume he's going to spell Connor. And if Connor gets hurt, all of a sudden he's the lead back in this offense that is trying to run the ball a fair amount. But it is one of real, solid volume appearance this season. He had 9 carries for 14 yards, which isn't great, but he had 2 catches on 2 targets for 23 yards.
He had a touchdown and almost vultured another one as well,
yes.
though. And
yeah, in a week that I didn't start him, even though I had him rostered. I think there's upside to be had, and a really just absolutely putrid waiver landscape right now. There may be some better like flex plays around at wide receiver or tight end that are out there, but running back wise, it's pretty dry.
And if you're Arizona, you don't go out and cut Benjamin unless you're certain in your backup in Keontae Ingram here. So I really like this call, Nate. I think it's a sneaky play. Ingram, especially James Conner, guys. He's no clean bill of health. He was hurt a lot this season. So Keontae Ingram, like, he could be a guy like maybe we get to week 16, 17. He could be the league winner just because he might be the last man standing there in Arizona. I really like this call from you, Nate. And before we jump over to Scott's in the scope candidate and mine, I do want to address a couple questions here about waivers this week. First one from Albert. Do you guys like Paris Campbell? Absolutely. We didn't touch on Paris Campbell because I'm not 100% sure what he's rostered right now, Albert, but I would absolutely be prioritizing Paris Campbell as well. That's a great shout out, especially with Matt Ryan back. In the games Matt Ryan's been back in the last 3 weeks that he's played, he's been electric. So I really like that a lot. How do you guys feel about this next question here then from Lucius? What's up, Lucius? Hope you're having a good Tuesday evening as well. Says, sorry, stepped away for a second. Did you say you preferred Dulcich or Foster Monroe rest of season? So a little tight end question here. Guys, the Broncos offense, even against an inept defense last week, they cannot put up a lot of points, and they continue to show that. I'm worried about Dulcich a little bit long term. He's been exciting. Maybe no Jerry Jeudy, so maybe he gets a bump, Scott, or enough to want him over Foster.
I've got some recency bias with this one because I plugged him in a few leagues and it just killed me. Like 1 or 2 catches, whatever it was. In this case, I'm going to go with the tight end that I think is on a team that's going to pass the ball a lot more, and I think that's the Raiders. They're going to be in negative game scripts, and again, hinging on I agree. I don't think Darren Waller, if he does come back, it's going to be anytime soon. So I'm picking. I would rather have Foster Moreau.
I'm with you too, Nate. How do you feel about it being your hometown Broncos?
Same. The Broncos offensive line has completely fallen apart. They're on their 3rd starting left tackle, their 3rd starting center, and their 3rd starting right guard this season. They're a mess. This offense is crap moving forward unless something seriously changes. And that, unfortunately, I love Dulcich. I love him to death. And in Dynasty, he's a hold right now. But in redraft, I want Foster Moreau because, like you said, Seth, guaranteed volume. And like Scott said, in a pass-heavy offense versus what are the Broncos? They're not even a play-heavy offense.
Yeah.
They're just not on the field enough.
They're just a heavy offense. They weigh down the world and those who watch that team regularly. So we apologize to you and Jen and company over there and little Jack. Scott, why don't you take us here to your in the scope candidate here for week number 11?
All right, so this one was teased a little bit earlier too in our discussions about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but mine is Jerick McKinnon, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. And this isn't the first time Jerick McKinnon's name has been brought up this season. There's been times when it seemed like he might be taking over and be, an effective pass catching running back. But what I like to look at this time of year is teams that have gone on bye. What has been the trend on that team since they came back from the bye? I mean, it's not a end all be all strategy, but typically a team is going to work on things over the bye. And if something changes, it's intentional. And since they came back from the bye, Clyde Edwards-Helaire's snap count, his snap share was 17% and then 6%. Whereas Jerick McKinnon's has been 30 to 40 to 50 all season. Yes. Jerick McKinnon's seen 8 targets in both of the last 2 games. I think that the Chiefs are settling in on Isaiah Pacheco being somewhat of their kind of hammer between the tackles back. And I think Jerick McKinnon is their pass catching back. And there was a question earlier I saw as well about whether I think it was the Tootsie Pop, whether CEH is droppable or just bench him. So maybe we should discuss that a little bit. But there's CEH. First of all, I don't have him on any teams. But second of all, he's nowhere near a lineup right now. And Jerick McKinnon, the thing about him is he's not one of those players where if an injury happens, he's going to go nuts. That's just not what he is. He's not a player that's going to take over as a bell cow. but he's a player that has standalone value right now, and I think through the end of the season.
Yeah, Scott, I like Jared McKinnon. I highlighted him actually. I think in week 3 he was possibly.
Yeah, I know we had brought him up before, but
and he fell out of the scope because he just didn't produce. But now he is producing a little more. He's getting a little bit higher the volume. And down the stretch, man, Jared McKinnon was a playmaker for the Chiefs at the end of last season, regular season, and in the playoffs. So they could lean on him. Especially like Pacheco hasn't been inspiring. Like that's a thing. Like Pacheco has some good runs here and there, but he also makes some really bad pass blocking decisions and puts the ball on the ground occasionally. So I personally like to answer the question that Rachel put out. I'm not dropping Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now. He's a hold, but like it's not a sexy hold, you know. It's just a hold and kind of a bench clogger, but I don't think I can drop him right now either.
I feel like CEH is a little bit of a waiver grenade, is what I like to call it. You throw him onto waivers, and people look at the name and be like, "Oh, it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire," and then it'll be somebody else's problem. I personally, unless I have tons of bench space, unless I have a ton of bench space, I'm not holding on to CEH.
Okay,
I'm with Scott.
That's me.
Okay. I guess I'm a little more stubborn here. I don't know if that was just a 1-game punishment from Andy Reid. It's just been so back and forth this season. It's
been both games since the bye that he's been in basically non-existent.
So Scott and Nate are saying you can go ahead and drop Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm saying I would hold him. I'm a little more conservative, though, I think, as a manager just in general. So keep that in mind as well, Rachel. Appreciate the question. Here I'm going to go to my in the scope candidate, guys, and it is Corey Davis going back to my frisky Jets, baby. And let me tell you about Corey Davis, guys. We haven't seen him since week 7. We haven't seen him healthy since week 6. However, in those 6 healthy games, he is averaging 11 PPR points per game. That is more than DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, Jerry Jeudy. So I think right now with him coming back this week, he has a shot to play at New England. He remains day-to-day. He is a historically favorite target of Zach Wilson here. So I'm expecting him to come back in, get those targets. We don't know what's going on with Elijah Moore. I think he's going to be the wide receiver 2 in this offense when he comes back behind the young Garrett Wilson there. And I'm not super excited to play him this week. Like I wouldn't be firing him up against New England, arguably the best secondary in the league right now. But I do like him in week 12 against Chicago, who's allowed 38 points per game to opposing teams over the last 3. This defense is not good without Roquan Smith. So I think if you need someone to play in that week 12 to 13 to 14 range, Corey Davis and the Jets have a really nice schedule. They obviously need him, guys. So I'm going with Corey Davis. Another chance to get some frisky Jets action here, Nate.
Well, and I think too, look at the playoff schedule, the fantasy playoff schedule. They've got Detroit at home, Jacksonville at home, and then Seattle on the road week 17. Sorry, Scott, that's a good matchup for Corey Davis.
Let's go, baby.
Is the fact that his rostership is so low. I mean, I guess I think
it's like 7.9% right now or something on ESPN leagues. It is below 10 for certain.
Well, and if you look on Sleeper, him being only 17% rostered is kind of crazy for a league full of deep rosters, or an app full of deep rosters. If you can get Corey Davis, and what's cool about this, Seth, what I really like is that he's a guy who could potentially be a league-winning type wide receiver in these matchups in the playoffs. But also, dude, if people in your league are looking at him and you're in a really savvy league. So most of the people who are listening to us, you can get Corey Davis without spending a ton of your free agent acquisition budget. You shouldn't have to spend any, and you could be the first place team and you're just looking to shore up your wide receiver core. You still can get Corey Davis on waivers with that low waiver priority.
Frisky Jets.
So I just need to real quick stick up for my Seahawks for just 1 second.
Tariq Woolen is a stud. I will say that. Tariq Woolen.
Seahawks are currently the 6th hardest matchup for wide receivers on the season.
I would like to see the last month data as well.
Ahead of the Patriots.
I would like.
Interesting.
I think it's even better because they were atrocious the first 4 games.
Interesting.
So I think over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, it's even better than that. They've given up some points, but they've been tight. They're the worst team to get for tight ends. They're the easiest matchup for tight ends. A lot of that was 3 rushing touchdowns by tight end Taysom Hill. but still, they are the worst against tight ends. I'm just saying, receivers specifically, they have not been the cake matchup that they seem like. That's
well,
all.
I heard the Jets are going to convert him to tight end for week 17, so we should
Just
be
put
fine.
tight end on the player card and he goes off.
Exactly, it'll be fine.
Right now, over the last month, Seahawks are they're right in the middle, 16. So neither a positive or a negative game.
Yeah, I think like a couple of weeks ago, if you looked at the last 4, they were good, but the last couple they've given up. So that makes sense, right in the middle, but not just a pushover.
Right.
Yeah, Tariq Woolen is the truth.
Guys, let's go ahead and answer this question for Jim before we get out of here tonight. Jim, 896. What's up, Jim?
Hey, Jim.
We love that handle here. Full PPR, start 3. Tyler Boyd, DJ Moore, Alan Lazard, Tyler Higbee, Donta Foreman. Wow, some really nice options here for Jim. He's already looking ahead here. Scott, I don't want to put you on the spot without seeing some of these matchups right now, but I think obviously I got to have Donta Foreman in my lineup each and every single week. So I think that's an auto play here. Out of the rest of them, what 2 are you firing up here?
My second virtual auto play is Tyler Boyd with Jamar Chase out. You had one of the best calls of the season calling Tyler Boyd, and he went nuts that game.
Yep.
But after Foreman and Tyler Boyd, I'm not interested. I'm not really interested in DJ Moore. It would come down to Lazard and Higbee for me, and I don't know what it's going to look like. It'd be hard for me to call Higbee over Lazard right now. I do think, like I said, I do think Higbee is going to go back up in PPR to being very valuable as a tight end, but I'd probably go Lazard as my third.
Lazard against the Titans this week, very favorable matchup for him. So I'm with you there. It's Foreman, Boyd, Lazard for me. Nate, are you in agreement as well?
I am indeed.
Hey,
Awesome.
we agreed on something.
Jim 896, man. Thanks for tuning in, man. Hope you subscribe to the channel. Come hang out with us again.
Good question.
Nate, you and I are going to be back on Friday, my friend. So we're going to tear that up. I'm excited to get to that with you. I want to thank Kyle in the back end. Everyone who's new to the channel, please subscribe. Come back and hang out with us again. Everyone who enjoyed this content, who is an IBT family member, please give us a thumbs up. Let your friends know who we are, what we're about. Every little bit helps here at IBT as we continue to bring you content. Scott, thank you again for your service here on Tuesday nights. Nate, I'll see you again, my friend, on Friday. We got an awesome one loaded for the IBT family then.
We've got comfy shirts. They're really comfy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll actually be making an announcement here on that tomorrow. So keep up to date with us on Twitter. Got some merch coming out. Scott, I appreciate you letting the cat out of the bag. It's all right.
I'm sorry. I was just being honest. I'm wearing a comfy shirt right now. It happens to say IBT Media.
Hey, that's all right. That's all right. The cat was already out of the bag. Guys, we appreciate the in-between family so much. We'll be back soon on Friday. Until then, guys, keep it in between. Your destination for both some feel-good lifestyle advice and some fantasy football advice.